Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here. Dr. Judy, WTF. And tonight's show is about dependent personalities. So, for those of you who are watching for the first time and don't know it, this is a call-in show, everyone. So, please feel free to call in. And that number is 323-843-2826. And so I'm going to start by giving a little bit of an introduction to the mind map system, which is how we're going to break down dependent personalities and how they are formed, how they are caused, as I like to put it. And then we're going to trace how these dynamics break people down and break the individual who's dependent down and those around them down and create chaos and defense mechanisms, and ultimately an even more serious breakdown. So the mind map is something that I created years ago as a tool originally to heal global disconnect. And so what happened to that project was it got put on the back burner because I realized that it needed a huge marketing arm behind it. And so I decided to use the model to help heal individual human disconnect one-on-one. And so therefore I started using the mind map as a psychological system of healing. And I put aside my traditional psychotherapeutic modality, which I felt did not have enough strength as a system to carry people from the problem through breaking it all down and paradigm shifting people into solutions. So now here we have it. Here is the model of healing, which my entire staff has been trained to utilize. And so the way this model works is it's divided into the past, the present, and the future. And the past has to do with the wounds of childhood and how we react to them and how they encode into the fiber of our being. The present has to do with how that damaging effect of wounds of childhood creates chaos in us and then leads to all kinds of interesting defense mechanisms, including drug, sex, rock and roll, and anything that you can think of that we use to defend ourselves from thinking and feeling and doing. And then as a result of these defenses, which are usually unhealthy, although there are some healthy ones, obviously, like exercise and meditation and eating right and that category of healthy defenses. When we engage in very unhealthy defenses, we end up imploding or exploding. And that would be panel 6 until we get therapeutic intervention and break through all that mess and come to the last chapter here, which is the bottom third, which is the future where we want to be going, which is the paradigm shift out of old childhood wounds, recoding the past into healthier ways of being in the world and healthier ways of seeing oneself in the world and seeing others in the world, and ultimately having a sense of unity with oneself and those around us. So let's go back to the notion of dependency. And so I want to start by saying that healthy dependency leads to healthy independence. And what I mean by that is that if, as infants, as babies, we have all of the, I call it the psychological nutrients, if all of our psychological nutrients are met, like safe parenting, a strong parental structure, attunement to the baby, eye contact, skin contact, breastfeeding, stay-at-home parenting, at least for the first couple of years of life as much as possible. If we have parents that put our needs above and beyond their own, primarily, not always, not 24/7, but primarily. And if we have good enough parents, then we form what is called healthy dependency, meaning that we can lean on our parents and grow, and as a result of growing, we can get stronger and stronger, and pretty soon launch out of the nest of the original family. And that's how we grow to be healthily independent and become ready for interdependence, which I will talk about later on in the show. And so what happens with dependency is that somehow there's a sense of an arrested development. There is a sense that it's dangerous actually to leave the home. It's dangerous to start separating and individuating from the primary caregiver. And oftentimes this happens when a child is threatened with abandonment and forms clinging behavior, or doesn't get all of the loving and nurturing support that they need in the first few years of life, and again exhibits clingy behavior, and the structure of the family isn't solid, so that everything is shaky and foundationally it's unstable. So think about it as that child or the infant clinging to a shaky family tree, so to speak. So if you look at panel number 3, as a metaphor for encoding, what we encode there, when we don't have that solid DNA strand, if it's fundamentally built on unstable forces, like unstable parenting, what happens when we shake the tree, the family tree, so to speak, is everything falls apart into chaos. And there goes the entire family collapsing, and all the people who held on for dear life on that unstable bond now fly off in space, and they're hurling out in outer space, and they don't have a place to land. And so what happens to people like that is they obviously start getting scared, and then they ball up in a defense mechanism. And now we're on panel 5, just so that you can track the mind map with me. And this defense mechanism becomes the dependent type of defense mechanism. And so dependent people tend to isolate, they tend to cling, they tend to need. So let's get a little bit into symptoms of dependent personality disorder. And here's an article called Dependent Personality Disorder Symptoms by Steve Bresser, PhD, and it's from an article March 19th, 2019, so it's a recent article. Symptoms of dependent personalities include a long-standing need for the person to be taken care of and a fear of being abandoned or separated from. Chronic physical illness or separation anxiety disorder in childhood or adolescence may predispose an individual to the development of dependent personality disorder. And I'm adding to that unstable parenting and parenting that doesn't provide for the attunement to the child and the nurturance of the child will leave the child unsafe and clingy. Symptoms of dependent personality disorder include difficulty making everyday decisions, needs for others to assume responsibility for major areas of his or her life, difficulty expressing disagreement with others because of fear of loss of support or approval of that other person, difficulty initiating projects or doing things on his or her own, due to a lack of self-confidence and judgment or abilities rather than a lack of motivation or energy. The dependent person usually goes to excessive lengths to obtain nurturance and support from others to the point of volunteering to do things that are unpleasant. So here you can see the clingy behavior, the people-pleasing type of behavior, all in the service of please don't abandon me, please don't let me go, and I'm too weak to do it on my own, so stabilize me. A dependent personality feels uncomfortable or helpless when alone, and because of exaggerated fears of being unable to care for him or herself effectively. Person also feels uncomfortable or helpless and therefore urgently seeks another relationship as a source of care and support when a relationship ends. And in previous episodes, many episodes, I talk about borderline personality disorder and all kinds of personality disorders. And these labels are useful only to the extent that they describe a system gone wrong. Now, at the core of borderline personality disorder is a fear of abandonment. However, a dependent person is distinct from the borderline personality disorder in that they don't usually threaten suicide, and they engage in people-pleasing behavior. The borderline PD, personality disorder, is usually more labile and emotionally volatile and acts out a lot more than a dependent personality disorder, just for that distinction. Also, dependent personalities are unrealistically preoccupied of being left to care for themselves. And this is a call-in show, everyone, so please feel free to call in 323-843-2826. And for those of you who do not know, I do have a PDF available for free for you of my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, which will break down all of these panels from 1 through 9, connect the dots for you, and help you to connect your own dots so that you can start thinking like a shrink and process your own feelings. So please feel free to request this free PDF of the book. And if you need further assistance, please know that there's a mind map video series that's available to you as well, and a team of people to help you journey from childhood wounds through dismantling them and shifting out. Because personality disorders describe long-standing and enduring patterns of behavior, they are most often diagnosed in adulthood. And remember, children cannot be diagnosed with a personality disorder because personality disorders are chronic, and they are not diagnosed until adulthood because children are forming their personalities, and so they are more malleable in general. Dependent personality disorder is diagnosed in 5.5 to 0.6% of the general population. I believe that men and women are both pretty equally diagnosed with this disorder. There's an equal distribution here statistically. Like most personality disorders, dependent personality disorders will decrease in intensity with age, and by the time people are in their 40s and 50s, many people experience few of the most extreme symptoms. So I think that as people grow older, maybe they learn, or life itself molds them and shapes them towards dependence or interdependence, which I will get into a little more so that you can start understanding the distinction. So to go back to the mind map thinking, any kind of a system gone wrong will thwart growth. And instead of the person getting stronger and more independent, they start leaning more and more on the other. And ultimately, this creates a real breakdown, especially if you're married to somebody with this dependent nature. It will absolutely put a great big stress on the marriage. So I want to go back into 8 symptoms of dependent personality disorder. This is an article by Emily Lockhart, and giving her credit for this. So here are 8 symptoms of dependent personality disorder, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear how your life interfaces with this topic and whether you can identify with being a dependent personality, having lived with somebody who perhaps is exhibiting these traits, and how to strengthen your boundaries in your relationship so that everyone can eventually start to morph, grow, separate and individuate, and self-actualize to be the best of their best. So these are the 8 symptoms to look out for. Appearing needy. Obviously, that would be a very telltale sign. An individual with dependent personality will often appear needy, particularly when in the presence of the person who they depend. So again, this is a kind of a relationship where there's a toxic tie to that one individual. The behavior can be apparent in a wide range of ways, but particularly clear when the individual needs to make an important decision. So they'll turn to the other person, and so the other person may feel tremendously burdened to help that person make up their mind about anything. It could be about what to have for dinner, or what to wear, or where to go, or what political opinion to have. So this could be pretty pervasive and pretty irritating to the partner, and could lead them to give up on all attempt at decision making, leaving the partner with the heavy burden of decision making for them. So if this is sounding familiar and familial, please do call me and get on the couch, and we can discuss this and source it and create a pathway out of this. So as I said before, people can start to separate and individuate and become independent and eventually interdependent, which is the healthier way to be in life, whether it be partnership or at work or general friendships and social relationships. So the next symptom of dependent personality disorder is separation anxiety. So it's one thing to feel anxious when someone close to you goes away for a few weeks or months. It's another to feel completely lost in the world just because they've left. So how does this develop? What is the cause of this? Again, I reference back to healthy dependency creates healthy independence. And as a big fan of Dr. John Bowlby, I talk about the emotional ingredients for mental health, which is the security and the attunement. And unfortunately, when I see patients who have been left to, let's say, cry it out in the crib too long in inappropriate ways, when they have been put into daycare too soon, when they don't have the consistency of a mother or father, or even when mother is there and she's emotionally not available because she's depressed or anxious or engaged in some sort of an addiction, then it makes the attachment an insecure attachment, and that's what creates this kind of a clingy behavior that then carries forth into adult years. So the affected individual may be unable to focus on anything when that person is missing, because now they're busy and preoccupied with feeling the abandonment and feeling shaken and not having someone to help them in everyday life and even do simple things for them, like choose what to have for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So this is something very, very necessary to source in terms of the cause. And I think we have a question from the chat room. Thank you very much. Can dependent personality disorder be considered a defense against the chaos of childhood wounds? And if so, in what sense is it a defensive reaction? Absolutely. This is a defense mechanism against being against not being nurtured properly. So bring back the question. I just want to make sure that I attend to it properly, please. And if so, in what sense is it a defensive reaction? Well, if they didn't have that healthy dependency, then they become clingy and they don't grow, and they just hang on to that proverbial hand of the other person, thinking that they're not strong enough and they're not smart enough and they're not capable enough. And so as a defense against falling apart, as a defense against feeling lost and abandoned, they'll start this clingy behavior. So yes, panel 5, defense mechanism of clinginess is a defense mechanism against being abandoned too soon and not having enough healthy dependency in the first formative few years of life. And thank you very much for that question. And please feel free to ask away in the chat room or call me and get on the couch, and we can dissect this so that people can really understand what this is and how it affects everyone. And remember, when one person is behaving in a way that leans against another person, that person's going to get sick. So imagine leaning and then the other person having to shore up and make sure that they guide the person and make sure that they're there for the person. It becomes burdensome. And so it's not a happy situation for the person that's being depended upon. Also, another way that we can tell someone is a dependent is, as I mentioned, they're struggling with the choices: where to attend college, which car to buy, all of the things that I mentioned before. Just everyday decisions become really painful and a chore, and then the other party, the significant other, usually is bothered with, what should I do? What should I wear? What should I eat? Where should I go to school? It just becomes really an endless barrage of help, help, help. So point number 4, poor decision making. So, being unable to make firm choices about major or minor matters, can lead them into serious trouble with their mental and physical health. So, remember, the mind and the body are interconnected. So, when we're not feeling healthy physically, then we tend to isolate. We may not get out there and exercise. We may not get out there, period. And the defense mechanism of isolationism becomes part of the deal because they don't feel strong enough to be out there unless their partner is, so to speak, holding their hand. If you're concerned that someone you know has developed dependent personality disorder, consider if that person consistently makes decisions that clearly hurt themselves by benefiting someone else. So sometimes a person is so dependent that they will sacrifice themselves to try to people please the other because they don't want to be left. So they're in a very, very scary predicament. And as I like to say, childhood is a hostage situation. And so is this situation, because they're hostage to their dependency. And so they don't have a lot of freedom to live their life and think their own independent thoughts. And again, this is a call-in show, and I do love call-ins, so please get on the couch. And the number again is 323-843-2826. So here is more into shutting others out. So when people start shutting down and being more afraid of life, they start shutting other people out because other people may be seen as unsafe. One major symptom of this disorder is focusing all of one's attention on a single other and distancing themselves from friends, family, colleagues. So you can sense the isolationistic characteristic of this disorder. It's not fun for anyone, and they just keep getting smaller and smaller in their assertion and smaller in their growth capacity. And it's kind of like if you look at panel number 5, they start shrinking in terms of their ism. So their development of their individualism is not a healthy development. It's not expansive. It's not inclusionary. It doesn't allow a lot of light in, a lot of growth in, because again, they're scared. They're fear-based and abandonment-based. Another sign is avoidance of responsibilities. Imagine having a close friend or family member who thrives in social situations and in connection with these strengths, goes into a career, politics, and so on. Now, imagine that this person meets someone who discourages this kind of behavior because they're needy. So they need the person to stay at home. They need the person not to go out. They need the person not to be popular. So can you see how restrictive this kind of disorder is? So in response, the person, mainly the one they depend on, may stop attending the events that made them so successful. And over time, their willingness to go above and beyond their career fades away to the point where they may no longer carry out the basic requirement of the position. So this is not a growth-producing system. This is a limiting system creating implosions. Okay, so what I mean by implosions is the system is about to collapse because everyone is now participating in shutting down and isolating, and not much light is created for others. It's just it's a dying system is what it is. Another sign is devastation when a relationship ends. An individual with dependent personality disorder can come to feel that their value is dependent on the relationship with another. Now, unlike borderline personality disorder, where the borderline personality is absolutely sometimes suicidally devastated when a relationship ends, a dependent person may also feel that way. It's just that they may not threaten suicide, they may not threaten cutting themselves, they may not act out as much. However, they're still pretty devastated. So in this kind of situation, the end of the relationship, connecting these people can have absolutely devastating effects. It may take months or even years for them to recuperate, and because usually they don't expand themselves and because they don't develop careers and friendships and other networks of interconnectivity, they die on the vine. And again, they don't easily recuperate after a relationship ends. And the 8th sign here, according to this article, is tolerance for mistreatment. Because they're so dependent, they may tolerate mistreatment more than the ordinary because they feel that they're really in a hostage situation. So the philosophy is, please don't leave me, I'll stay at any cost. And a lot of the Dr. Judy WTF shows have been centered around narcissism. And so narcissistic oriented people may pair up with dependent personalities because they can then control them, demean them, devalue them, and eventually discard them if they're done with them. And so they again, a system gone wrong. They will feed on the weak and weaken the core of this person even more. So I want to refer to Dr. Murray Bowen, who talks about separation and individuation, and the healthy growth cycle of an individual is to start with a merger between the mother and baby and form that healthy dependency. And then when the baby can start feeling comfortable and secure and attached, then they can hatch out of that situation. And through the hatching out, they know that there's a stable backbone behind them. And so they can look back and check and see if mom is there, dad is there, primary caregiver is there. And as a result of that, develop the confidence to keep venturing out in the world. And in the case of the dependent personality, there is no security. So instead of launching and hatching out in the world, they don't hatch, and they keep retreating back, and they don't feel that backbone supporting them, and so they tend to go backwards and not forwards. And so I think that you can now start to connect the dots and see this as a system gone wrong. And again, this is a call-in show, and please feel free to call in and ask questions in the chat room. I'm happy to take your questions if you don't like being on the radio, and I can answer them for you. So ask away, and I will answer. So I want to refer to another article on the difference between codependency and dependency. What is the big difference? Because these distinctions are important in terms of how the system goes wrong. Being codependent is hardly the same thing as simply being dependent. And this is an article by Leon Seltzer, PhD, Evolution of the Self. It's crucial that these two types of dependency be recognized as distinct. Codependent individuals aren't dependent on others. They're primarily dependent on the other person's dependence on them. I'll read that again. It's a little confusing. They're not particularly dependent on others. They are dependent on the other person's dependence on them. So this is a different kind of dynamic. It's also important to distinguish codependent relationships from interdependent ones. So let me go to panel number 7 so that you can understand visually what I mean by an interdependent relationship. So if you look at the bubbles that interconnect here in panel number 7, you will see that there's light as they interconnect. So in the case of healthy interdependency, it's a 1 + 1 is more than 2 phenomenon. So it's you and the other person creating light, resilience, resourcefulness, inner strength. So there's a support of the healthy individualism. One healthy individualism supports another healthy individualism to grow and flourish. Now, codependency is clearly maladaptive and dysfunctional. It might have a mutuality, but it's negatively symbiotic. Negatively symbiotic in that there's no light there. They're basically just chipping away at the fiber of each other's being, as I like to put it. Having dependency needs is healthy in and of itself to a degree. We're all wired to connect. We're all wired to depend on each other. However, when there's no value added, the system starts to collapse, and then there's a sense of robbing light from each other. And if you can look at those bubbles again, Visually, what I'm talking about is instead of expansion, you have contraction, and at the end, you might have even a kind of like an implosion based on a depletion of the system. They maintain in self-sufficient relationships, people maintain their own identity. In codependent relationships, this identity is chipped away at. In codependent union, both parties are over-dependent on each other, in which the two individuals lean so heavily on another that they are left off balance. So you could see the chaos of panel 4. So think of panel 3 as two unhealthy individuals leaning into each other, and because both of them are not healthy, they lean so hard against each other that they fall apart and create a lot of chaos. They're left off balance and desperately try to get core dependency needs met. So what's happening is both parties do not have core dependency needs met. So they vampire off of each other and kind of eating away at the fiber of each other's being, and the original fiber isn't very strong to begin with. So I think that this begins to then define the different systems gone right, the different systems gone wrong. So codependency system gone wrong. Dependent personality system gone wrong. Interdependence, two healthy, more or less healthy people coming together to co-create a relationship and add value to each other. So if you feel that you've been in a relationship where you emerge less than rather than more than, then let's talk and get on the couch with me, and feel free to call in 323-843-2826, and let's talk about how you got there to begin with, what the cause of this is, and talk about how to create a pathway out of this mess. So I want to go through some other points, since I'm not getting a lot of call-ins tonight, but maybe that'll change because, again, I know you have questions. I know because we get a lot of calls at the Psychological Healing Center, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to let this material sink in, because usually people think in terms of diagnoses, and I am a systems thinker. So rather than slapping labels on people, which we do because it helps us get clearer and familiar with definitions, I'm more interested in how all of these moving parts work, the multi-generational cause behind this, the cultural overlay of how people are injured at the causal level and multi-generationally so, and then how everything is breaking down as a result. So here are some aspects of dependent personality that then get affected. Self-esteem. Obviously, your self-esteem will be affected if you need the validation of others. Their fragile sense of self-worth and well-being is extremely vulnerable, making them highly sensitive and reactive to others. I had a show on highly sensitive people. And so when we don't have enough protection in life, when we don't have a thick enough skin, so to speak, when we're left compromised, when we don't have good boundaries, then we're really easily affected and dysregulated, and we become fragile and more easily fall apart. And that's part of the system gone wrong. Dependent people have compromised their ability to assert their need in a relationship because, again, they're concerned about asserting their need because they're afraid that if they assert their need, then the other person might run away. So they might just become needy and people pleasing and not have a way to assertively say, I need this or I need that in a healthy way. And for people looking for healthy ways to communicate, I want to refer you to the Peaceful Healing Dialogue, which is in my book and also on my website under the forms section. And it's a way of talking to each other so that you don't burn the bridge, and so that you keep the relationship intact and address the problem and become solution oriented and become expressive and emotive as opposed to passive or aggressive, and have a flow of conversation that leads people to hopefully more clarity, more understanding, and more interconnection. Unhealthy dynamics create unhealthy dialogue. And so the solution is also to teach people how to talk to each other, because the more we're able to talk to each other without blaming each other, without shaming each other, without criticizing each other, the more likely we are to get heard, and the more likely we are to stay connected, and the more likely we are to form patterns of interdependency as opposed to dependency or isolation or passive-aggressive means to get one's way. Some more telltale signs. Responsibility centers more on the other person's feelings, needs, wants, and desires than their own. So they're putting other people's needs before their own because they're making a bad deal. They're in a dependent relationship, and so they feel that they've got to give up a lot of themselves to people please and be regarded and taken care of. Basic ability to set boundaries obviously goes out the window, and possibly others' requests of them or demands of them is highly restricted. Behavior is largely dictated by an underlying fear of being alone. So fear-based behaviors lead to becoming at the effect of another's needs. And so rather than being causal and assertive and having these great boundaries that invite the right people in and keep the wrong people out, they don't really set boundaries. They're always trying to assess the other person's needs so that they don't rock the boat, and they create this kind of a false sense of security, which eventually falls into chaos and breaks down on them. Sense of themselves in situations of discord is that they're always victims, unable to be heard, sympathized with, or understood. So again, there's a naivete here. There's no sense of agency, of power, of a sense of importance. A lot of dependent personalities have negative core beliefs that include feeling stupid or less than or somehow not important enough. The compulsive loyalty to others can go substantially beyond what's warranted and may end up hurting them. So again, please, 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 people please, people please, people please, with the deal of don't drop me, don't abandon me, don't rock my boat. And it's just a really, really bad, dysfunctional deal. So I'm going to invite you again to call in. I know that we have a handful of minutes left, so I'd like to take maybe a call or two, question or two. And again, the number is 323-843-2826. And I did a mind map painting session today. I uploaded it on YouTube. And so if you have a chance, watch it, because I went into panel 1, the graphics of panel 1, and I started painting the darkness and the light, and started painting the childhood wounds and how those shadow over us and diminish our ability to be the best of our best. And I have a question from the chat room. I don't know why people aren't calling in tonight, but they are asking me questions from the chat room. At what point do adult siblings realize that they've been bamboozled by covert narcissistic parents? It's so clear to me, but siblings are either blind in denial or are just a continued substrate. Well, okay, that's a great question. When do we wake up? Sometimes never, because in our childhood minds, we think that our parents are right. They're our gods. They're our sources of everything. And so sometimes what happens is parents will pit one sibling against another, and sometimes they'll only realize it later when all of their relationships with their brothers and sisters are falling apart. And sometimes they'll realize it when very, very extreme behaviors show up, extreme behaviors that really show a lack of empathy, a lack of care, a lack of heartfelt anything. And sometimes it's not so clear because we don't want to believe it, and it's sometimes so subtle. It's like, I liken it to this: if there is a fish swimming in dirty water, will the fish know that it's swimming in dirty water? Probably not, until it gets poisoned and sick and maybe even dies. Now, how would a fish know that it's swimming in dirty water? Well, if we took the fish out of the water, right, and showed the fish that it was swimming in dirty water, the fish could say, aha, I see. Now I know why I'm sick. Now I know why I'm not swimming very well. Now I know why I feel so toxic. Same thing with you. Once you pull yourself out of the system and start becoming an observer and not an absorber, then you can see some of these light bulbs going off. Look, if you're not feeling well, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling at the effect of, if you're having psychosomatic issues, if you're feeling anxious, depressed, these symptoms are telltale signs that you're in a sick system. And I think we have a call-in. So hello, you are on the couch. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from? The person's still there? Okay, call back. Please call back. All right, so symptoms are the hieroglyphics that point to an unhealthy cause. So symptoms don't just come out of thin air. Why are we anxious? Why are we depressed? Why are we isolating? Why are we dependent? Why are we narcissistic? Why? These are the questions I like to ask. So let's source them. And so we have to look at our blueprint. We have to look at those 5 childhood injuries. Obviously, if we're verbally abused or physically abused or sexually abused or neglected or smothered, we're not going to feel very well, are we? And our growth process will be thwarted, and we won't manifest into strong, healthy individualism. So the best way we can tell is something's off. Something just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't line up. Someone is trying to demean, devalue, or destroy. There's a sense that there's a lack of empathy. There's a lack of a healthy person, in my opinion, has the ability to self-reflect and self-correct, own their own stuff. As a matter of fact, I did a show just for parents to understand that the more we as parents could own our own stuff and grow, the healthier our children will be. So healthy people own their own stuff. Unhealthy people project all over the place and blame and shame and make other people feel guilty and so on and so forth. And so these are telltale signs that you're not with a healthy person. The interdependent type of relationship enhances. So if you're in a healthy relationship, then you're in the service of the other person's psychological and physical well-being, along with spiritual well-being, if that's important to you. And if you're not in a healthy relationship, you may feel vampired. You might feel unattended to. You might feel physically sick. You might feel like a dark cloud has walked into the room. They're just all kinds of telltale signs. So use your gut. And I think most people can tell when they're in an interconnected relationship that creates light and sanity and clarity, and doesn't include elements like gaslighting or control or demeaning statements and so on, or levels of physical and sexual and any kind of abuse. So these are your telltale signs. Your symptoms include emotional symptoms, somatic symptoms. So check in with yourself, know thyself, and then you can go from there and try to understand and source the pain, and understand that if you came from a dysfunctional family, you're probably more vulnerable to what I call the WTF, or the what the Freud pattern of repetition. So you will pick people who neglect you if you've been neglected. You'll pick people who physically abuse you if you've been physically abused. Not all the time. This is not all the time. But generally, we'll pick that person that we can reenact our wounds with, not because we're stupid, but because we want to heal through them and finish the psychological file. I talk a lot about this in therapy, in the Mind Map video series, in the book, obviously on the show. So beware of the WTF. And how do you close the psychological files? You don't go picking pathological people to close those files with, because they'll only hurt you more. They're not capable of being healers. And go watch my show, Hurters Can't Be Healers and Narcissistic Abuse, and that'll explain a lot. And in the meantime, the way to close those psychological files is to pull them up and let them become conscious, and then reprocess your feelings in the course of the therapy, and have these feelings become pathways for you to express yourself, rather than implode upon yourself or explode on other people. So if anyone wants to call in, I think we have another couple of minutes. If not, I just want you to understand what the Freud nature of the game, and that the mind map is a system to help you shed light, truth light, on all of these dark areas, and for the very last time, bring to the surface the wounds of the past, so that you can start closing and completing these psychological files, and release yourself from psychological prison. So I want to move in a minute to my weekly Shrink That Tune, and reminding everyone that you're welcome to call in and ask for a free consultation, and you can download the book for free. You can order it on Amazon, and if you like us, then please like us on Facebook, and Amazon reviews are always welcome, and Yelp reviews are always welcome. The team is so happy when they are acknowledged, and thank you for everyone who has written these beautiful reviews on Yelp and Amazon and so on. Very, very much appreciated. And if you're stuck and need a pathway out, there are many people on staff that can accommodate your schedule and your long distance needs through Skype or teletherapy, and budgetary considerations are always taken into consideration. So I want to move to Shrink That Tune. And this song is by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I Need Someone. Perfect lyrics for dependent personalities. I need someone. Whoa, how I need someone. I need someone like you. Can you hear the neediness and the clinginess? Today my love has gone away. He won't be back. He wants it that way. So I guess that person's done with this dependent person. Maybe the dependency pushed the lover right out the door. And I need someone to take his place. So it's not even really the person, it's the need that takes priority. So no wonder the person didn't feel special, because it was just the need that was being fulfilled. The sense of desperation here. Someone with a warm embrace. He promised me he would be true. Yeah, he said I love no one but you. But here I stand. I'm all alone with nothing to do but to stay at home. And unfortunately, this kind of clingy behavior is self-fulfilling, because at the end of this system gone wrong, people can push the ones that they need the most away. And I need someone. Oh, how I need someone. Yes, and I need someone. Someone like you. Yeah, we used to travel all around and around. Yeah, we always went from town to town. But since my baby been gone away, I haven't had a happy day. So everything is invested in the person. There's no joy outside the dependency. Even though we were together for so long, I can't imagine what went wrong. Here we are so far apart, and now he's thinking that he's so smart. Well, maybe he's thinking that he can't stand the clinginess anymore. I need someone. Yeah, I need someone like you. I need someone. And look at all these need words. So in order for us to be mentally healthy, we have to go through the painful process of separation and individuation. And for the parents out there, allow your children to lean on you in the first few months and years of life, and don't kick them out of the nest too soon, because if you do, you might be raising a very dependent or codependent kind of individual. And what we want to foster in ourselves and in the next generation is healthy dependency leading to interdependence. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and feel free to call the Psychological Healing Center for any questions or needs for your growth process. Good night, everyone.